Hello and welcome to another episode of Pakistonomy. The pandemic has been a major accelerant, and one of the key things that it has accelerated is how consumers around the world, including in Pakistan, are doing more and more of their shopping online. And the pandemic also brought to light the supply chain, logistics, infrastructure needs countries have around the world, the cold storage needs that countries have and need investment in, and the role e commerce, frankly, has played in making sure that consumers can be safe at home while consuming the products that they need on an everyday basis. One such company trying to build the retail e-commerce supply chain infrastructure in Pakistan is 24/7. It is an online grocery platform based in Lahore, and its goal is to digitize and formalize Pakistan's fresh produce ecosystem and bring you quality fresh produce to your doorstep. I have the honor of having with me Jarrar Shah, who is the co-founder and CEO of 24/7. He's a graduate from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where he studied economics and political science, and has been an entrepreneur based in Pakistan since 2003. The 24/7 journey, from what I have been able to find out, and I'm interested in hearing Jarrar's thoughts on it, is his own understanding or his own problem that he faced where he could not find quality produce, and also realize that middlemen in the ecosystem, whether you look at Pakistan, it's also a perennial problem in India, take a lot of the value captured or produced by the farmers, and then give the consumer a product that often is subpar. So Jarrar is trying to solve that problem for millions of Pakistani consumers. Jarrar, welcome to Pakistonomy.
Assalamu alaikum, Uzair. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with 24/7. I know you mentioned, and I've mentioned, that it was something you personally experienced and it gave you an idea about starting 24/7. But give the listener and share with us a bit more about 24/7, its philosophy, and why did you start this startup?
So basically, I always wanted to, do something on my own. I wanted to build something, and even when I was in college, my intent was to return to Pakistan, and I came back. But at that stage, obviously, I didn't have any idea about what to do or how to do it. I hadn't gone to business school, so I'd gotten a liberal arts education. So I was just, trying out things. One could even say meandering through my 20s. So I became a consultant. I was part of a boutique consultancy firm in Lahore. We were doing a lot of business development and some financial consultancy. And, I had some land very close to Lahore, probably less than an hour's drive. And I thought, this is an asset, and, maybe I should be utilizing this in a better way, maximizing cash flows from this particular asset. And it's so close by that I could do something, and then, I could be this weekend, it could be my weekend thing. So I, just did a little bit of research, and I wanted to do something progressive in farming. So I said, okay, why not go for this tunnel farming for off-season produce? So I ended up, putting up this farm, pilot phase, around 2 acres or so. Got the real, good quality inputs, got a very good team in place, and everything went off fantastically. We had yields coming in 5 or 6 times normal. So our tomatoes, our karelas and bhindis, so they looked good, and they were in much larger quantity than usual. And the best thing was we were in the off season. So economics mein we had studied this, supply demand sets the price. And one would imagine that if you're bringing in supply at a time when there's limited supply, as a supplier you fetch a fairly good price. And this equation was working on the retail side of things in Pakistan. Obviously, like for instance, these tomatoes or these karelas were selling for quite a high price in the retail sector. But
high enough price to put the finance minister on the spot occasionally when he would not know the price of tomatoes, right?
Clearly, absolutely, it's a huge thing, and it happens every December, November. you go through the cycle where tomatoes go through the roof because and we had this issue last year as well, and because of trade being closed with India, the supply really got distorted this time around. So I saw this. I was very happy. I thought, this was the business I had been looking for, and this was my calling. And I'm going to set up this corporate entity, and I would, just take on lease all this land, put up tunnel farms, become this tunnel farming expert, provide tunnels to people and expertise and inputs and all of that. And in 2-3 years time, I'll do an IPO and I'll be set. So that was my dream scenario, all figured out. And then I got, the harvest starts coming in. I start going to the mandi, and my produce is going there. And all of a sudden, I'm like seeing these auctions happen, and I'm getting 5 rupees or 7 rupees a kilo for something that's selling for 100 rupees a kilo, just 10 kilometers away for retail. And it was, this rude awakening in more ways than one. And the more, I would look at it, I just couldn't understand how I was getting the same price for A grade produce was getting the same price as what they call D grade. So there was no grading premium. There was absolutely nothing. It's all kind of fixed and rigged, the auction system, and it's quite interesting. And it's the same as the case in India as well. I mean, they for over 100 years, the Aarti is the one controlling all of this. And now the Aarti is also indispensable in the manner that they're also the bank in the whole system. They provide the liquidity, provide the credit. So the
And I would add that
more I,
they're also the political force on the ground because
yes,
of
yes.
the money that the value they capture and the financial services they provide to the community
Absolutely.
itself.
No, it's a big chunk of your informal economy, and a lot of cash is exchanged, and these seats are very, very coveted. And there's a political angle to all the agricultural marketing committees that are formed after every new government comes in, the committee gets changed, and you can imagine why. But things remain the same. The committee gets changed, but the way things work remains the same. So. Uh, so the more I thought about it, it really uh, kind of bothered me. And hum bachpan se we've been hearing this, that we've got this agrarian economy or agrarian backbone, and we have such a huge labor force that's majority of it is in agriculture, and our productivity is not going anywhere, and our incomes are not going anywhere, and as a percentage of GDP, it's not really that productive. And at least in this particular aspect of agriculture, I could see why that was happening, because the way the markets are set up, there's a classic case of market failure. There is no incentive for a farmer to grow better produce. There's no incentive for a farmer to invest in better seeds, because they don't get any pricing for that. They don't get a premium for growing a better produce or a better quality produce, or using better farming practices, for instance, using less pesticides or more pesticides. I mean, there's no pricing incentive right now, and economic incentive without having that creates a huge issue. And I mean, for me, it was a thing that maybe if we could do something and not eliminate the Aarti, which is impossible, but maybe create an alternate marketing channel or a distribution channel. Because for me, it was a marketing issue, this, where we could connect the farmers directly to the consumers, and in the long run also create for consumers this huge benefit of better quality products, price stability, and knowing where their produce is coming from, which is totally absent in Pakistan right now. I mean, most of the world has traceability and all these things, but we don't have those things. We don't have certifications. So I thought that if one could do this for the local market, right? If we were to bring in traceability and certifications for the local market, we would automatically open up the export channel as well. We're sitting at the doorstep of GCC, and most of their produce comes from Spain and Italy and Tunisia and all these places, because we don't have certifications. So we have certifications in the Kinnu market or the mango, for instance, markets, but for the vast majority of our produce, we don't. And then look at CPEC. I mean, we have Chinese trucks coming in filled with gadgets and stuff, and they go back empty. And if we were to somehow get these certifications, we could easily get into their food supply chain as well. So the CPEC thing came much later, but at that stage, I thought, I mean, there were so many possibilities, and it would solve so many problems for so many farmers, consumers, and also be a business opportunity. And it's a hard thing to do because it's perishable. It's not probably as sexy a thing. People would say, "ये क्या तुम जमींदारी कर रहे हो या ये
तुम्हें
सब्जियों
मिशिगन भेजा और पाकिस्तान आ गया, तुम वापस टमाटर और सब
सब्जियों का
भिंडी
सब्जियों
भिंडी
का
बेचना शुरू कर दी."
exactly. So not very sexy. So that's basically how I kind of got started on this journey, and along the way, many iterations and ups and downs and lots of learnings, lots of hard knocks. But I guess वो जो underlying चीज थी, because वो एक personal pain point feel की, so it became there were there an underlying mission kind of developed, which helped things. It helped me to stay the course, so to speak, because there was a big picture. It was not about how am I going to make a quick buck, how am I going to double my money in 2 years, as is the case with Pakistani enterprise. Mostly हमारा यहाँ होता है payback period क्या है, real estate है या what can I do to double my money in like 2 years. So this was bigger than that, and obviously very scary journey as well. But yeah, so far it's been fantastic. Loving every minute of it. Learned lots, and long way to go.
So I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I want to get back to some of the very important points you made that have a macro sort of discussion element to them. But before I do that, I want to just dive deep into just 24/7 itself. It's currently, as I understand, based in Lahore. You've had a good funding round last year, and I want to start there in terms of, you raised these funds. First of all, like, what was that experience like in terms of telling investors what the opportunity is in Pakistan when it comes to the food supply chain and innovation in it, and what was their receptivity to even think about something like this, because it is something that has caught on a lot of investors' eyes in a market like India or Indonesia or parts of Latin America and Mexico. Pakistan is not really on the radar in the same length, even though its startup ecosystem has come up. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And off of that, like, now that you've had this funding round, like, where is your focus in terms of investing, where the startup goes to catalyze growth? Because there are so many things where you could invest to deal with this problem, right? But was curious to hear your priorities in terms of the short term.
Sure. So in terms of fundraising, I think it's actually, someone was telling me, an investor, one of our mentors, actually, my role is now much more of a fundraiser in chief than builder of business. That now I'm very humbled and thankful that I've been able to get an excellent, amazing team on board, and our core team is really strong, and they've really helped push things along and ease the pressure on me. But fundraising is not fun, and especially when I've been doing it. I mean, we still are doing it, but 2 years, 3 years back, it was really not the most ideal scenario. Uh, Pakistan somehow, I mean, not somehow, we probably know why, but the interesting thing and frustrating thing was that we were this market, population, demographics, everything. And we have India on one side and we had the GCC on the other. And you had VC money flowing into both regions. And VC money has been flowing into India since 2010. Billions of dollars have gone in, crazy valuations. And then GCC, Dubai, Saudi, all these countries, a lot of even their own money was going in, but a lot of external money coming in. And Pakistan was in this black hole where we had companies trying to raise money, but they were struggling. And then we had some local VCs come up, and it even took them quite a bit of time to raise their own funds. So that was very challenging. It took us a very long time to get our first external funding, and even then we got it from one of the, we were able to, we were very lucky to get a local family office to back us. uh, but in terms of the international thing coming on, I think 2020 kind of accelerated that. 2019, the Kareem exit helped bring a lot of focus on Pakistan, then the Kareem mafia, you could say. So the founders who started businesses who were Kareem alum, so they were able to attract some money, especially from the Gulf. And then obviously, I think people like Atif Awan and others who were able to get some Silicon Valley money into Pakistan, that changed things a lot. 2019, 2020. So now you see a much better scenario for founders, and you see the supply of capital being much more than it was 2 years back or a year back. So that has definitely changed. But it's not as we still haven't reached that stage where Indonesia was 4 5 years back or India was 10 years back. We still are still not on the radar of the main funds or the bigger funds. So there is that supply issue, but I think it's going to get solved very very quickly, because these things move very quickly, and there's so much capital, so much money being printed by central banks everywhere, that some of it is going to come here, because
Well,
this is
I
where the
have argued that this is the second reach for yield that has happened since 2007. The first global reach for yield, in a way,
yeah
Pakistan was able to finance much of its power and infrastructure investments because bonds
yeah
rates were low. They messed it up in different ways in terms of domestic policy and economic reforms. That's a longer tangential issue we won't get
yeah
to. But I think now there is a second global reach for yield, and that money, I think, has gotten smarter as well because it's going into innovation. And if you
correct.
can make a case for innovation, whether you're Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Mexico, you can attract those funds, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think so the game changer for us that has been this we've been able to get backing from a US based VC fund, SOSV, and that has really given us this, you can say, this runway to meet the international capital, because now we also have that credibility, right? It's not like we're someone pitching out from the cold or coming in from the cold. We actually have someone backing us, and that's been a game changer. And frankly, it's also been the amount of learnings that we've had in the last couple of months. It's been on a scale been exponential. So we've been learning a lot as well. So I think the capital scene, I think, is getting better, and the good quality startups will be able to, with having good teams and good stories, they should be able to get some funding. Obviously, luck will be involved, knowing the right people or getting to meet the right people at the right time. That element will always be there. In terms of what we are planning to do, we are still not in the situation where India was at. For instance, like if we were to look at a company in India, like a company like Big Basket, that would be a company that we would say, we would be in a way emulating, obviously adapting to our own environment, but also our own journey. But Big Basket, for instance, has raised almost $1 billion in the last 10 years. So they've been able to deploy capital and build things that obviously we can't even think of right now. So we have a very focused approach, very sequential approach. We don't want to do things where we are prematurely expanding or कहते हैं चादर देख के अपने को वो फैलाना चाहिए. So we are now a stickler for that, which means that we will focus on certain areas geographically as well as priority areas, grow them very very quickly, and then sequentially, as we go along in our journey and we're raising funds, we should be then, we should expand on those geographically as well as product wise. So for the next few months, where our focus will remain on Lahore, because we have not even fully deployed I mean, we haven't even like touched the surface in terms of the supply chain and logistics infrastructure that a city like Lahore would need. So our focus would be to have that deployed. Our business model really cranking on. I won't say optimized because that would be again premature, but at least going in a very clear direction. Which a few more months of data would validate that. And then once that's done, then it's just replication. We don't think that there's a race right now. There shouldn't be a race of where everyone in this space is going to be in 6 months. Rather, it should be where we would want to be in 3 years' time to 5 years' time. And if we keep that picture in mind and our focus accordingly, I think that will help us and our investors. Because we won't be burning through money like some others have or are.
Well, I mean, even big basket, right? Like India's food retail ecosystem has raised a lot of money, but continues to make losses, which has, your whole point, like about looking at the chadar kitna phailana hai. They've struggled with that as well. Right now, there's a whole legal case going on with Future Retail Group and the Amazon and Reliance, and Future Retail Group may go belly up because it has too much losses, etc. So I think yes, sustainability should be at the heart of the goal as well, because you want the industry to be sustainable long term, 3 4 5 years from now. You mentioned a couple of times like significant learning, so just share with us like what have those learnings been about, and more importantly, like one of the questions I had as you were discussing this was like, when you started to where you are now in 2021, what are some assumptions that you had that have been tested and maybe falsified, or you've had to evolve your thinking around as you've sort of grown in Lahore?
So, well, I mean, I would say when we started off, the assumptions then and now, there would be there's been a quite a long evolution. But I think one of the major learnings is that there's not a one size fits all solution. I mean, this is not a. I think it's not very like profound, but what I'm trying to say is that sometimes, especially in e-commerce and one sees this around the world, but also in Pakistan, you tend to copy paste a lot of models um, and we have seen that there, especially in our grocery and fresh food segment, there are a lot of psychologies at play, and you have to really address those psychologies and then accordingly come up with products and service offerings that you know bring up those value propositions. So this was obviously a learning phase. There was a lot of learning. It's still ongoing. Every day we get obviously data, and the more data one gets, the more your validation or your hypothesis gets tested accordingly. But with so sometimes we would initially it would be like, okay, I think where this is what the market is, so let's do this. And then over time the learning was, no, this is not what the market is. You have to frame it like an experiment, and then let's go test this and then see, and then if it's working, double down. If it's not, discard. I think this was one of the major learnings during this journey, was that you can't hold fast to your assumption and make it an ego thing. So you have to look at it from a very so the lean startup way, you would say. So you A/B test things, you do trial balloons and see how it goes. And the best thing with tech enabled enterprises is that then you can actually see data. This is not guesswork then. So I think this is a major learning, and this is something that more and more of us should embrace, especially in businesses and startups. Um, then the other thing was, again, it's sometimes you really have to dig deep. You have to I don't know about learning, but I think about pressures, the way society is. Our society is not very entrepreneurial or risk taking. We don't encourage risk taking like that. We, like earlier I alluded to, maybe with our investment thesis is usually, okay, let's invest in a plot, or maybe the most risky thing people would do is invest in the stock exchange. But again, you also see people like Double Shah in Pakistan who go around and people are giving him 20,000 and 50,000 in their lifetime savings for so that's also there. But my point is that there was a lot of pressure, and people say, "Oh, why would you be doing this? And why not just do your consulting work, or go work for a bank, or do whatever?" And these societal pressures or pressures from family. So being able to withstand that also uh, was something that was um, evolutionary process ho bhi tha. And learning how to do that will be a constant learning thing. So I would say, I mean, lots of and learning how to like stay the course, and when things would get really dark and lonely. Obviously, sometimes as a founder, you are in a very tricky situation, and even your co-founders, I mean, you can talk to them, but it's like if you've got everything on the line and skin in the game and all those things, then it can get lonely sometimes. So learning how to cope with that. But I think big picture, just keeping your eye on the prize, that helps. And every day is a new day type thing. So taking it a day at a time. These are some of the learnings. Um, and not being overly optimistic. I mean, every entrepreneur fundamentally is optimistic, but bringing in realism. And again, that comes with the testing. So if someone comes up with this concept, then you're always questioning yourself and trying to validate it with data.
Yeah, I think the innovating and trying new things is critical, right? It's one of the things, not only for a market as it matures to try new things because it hasn't been done before, but also to stay one curve ahead of what could potentially be your competition, right? And to out innovate your own self is critical because otherwise someone else may do that. But I think your point around the societal pressures is actually a very important one because I would argue that even now that you've had a good funding round in 2020, the money that you've put in the short term, if you had put that into a Behria plot or a file or some new real estate development project, in rupee terms, you probably could have had a higher return in the short term. Maybe not in the long term, but maybe some would argue that you can do that in the long term too. But
Uh,
that is a fundamental issue with the economy, right? That it is incentivizing regular investments and giving very high returns in unproductive investments that frankly are not contributing anything to society. But it is something that the way things are structured means that it is very hard for someone like you or another entrepreneur to even make the case for why they want to do something because the alternative is unproductive, easy, and high returns, right?
yeah.
And it's a structural problem there.
It's definitely a structural problem, and it's institutionalizing this structural problem by making it a mindset problem as well, because then the horizon is just plots and that's it. And it's a so one would hope that a few success stories that come out, like, so Kareem is obviously a huge success story, but more and more successful stories like a Baikia and others, as you get these in the ecosystem, this starts to become, because there's also a lot of bherchal herd mentality in our globally, but in our society especially. If someone's making been a successful person in a certain field, everyone starts doing that. If someone, whoever opened up the first spinning mill, every all the other uh, textile people said we have to open up a spinning mill. So that's how the thing goes. So hopefully we get a few successful cases here, and if that happens, which it will, given our market and our demographics and just the way the world has gone, I think we should see a lot of local capital start pouring into the ecosystem, a lot more. A lot of these family offices, these conglomerates, a lot of them are still sitting on the sidelines. They're not investing in money, and a lot of them are not used to investing in others. They're used to just doing everything on their own. So we need that Tata consultancy type, Tata Group. Tata is probably one of the largest investors in the Indian startup ecosystem in the last 10 years. And obviously, Reliance is now trying to do everything on their own. But the point is, even some of the corporates over here will start trying to do, they'll try to emulate Reliance as well, maybe a Nishat or the Dauds or someone else.
No, I think the herd mentality point is very valid. I remember, I think it was Scott Galloway who, last year was ranting about how America has become, and his argument was the world, because America apparently is the world. But I sort of disagreed with him on this, was that we have the idolatry of the innovator ongoing, right, or the entrepreneur. And his point was like, it's a bad thing because the Elon Musk of the world, and everyone wants to be an Elon or a Jeff Bezos or a Mark Zuckerberg, and that's not good. And I was like, in societies like ours in Pakistan, it's actually a good thing, because it inspires people, younger people, to go take risks and innovate and try to change the structures of the economy. Because the last thing a country like Pakistan needs that is young is a risk averse generation coming up, right? Because we need risk takers to say, well, if I have arthis trying to give me 7 rupees a kilo for something that's retailing 100 rupees, clearly there's something wrong. Let me go innovate that this British institution that is there since colonial times and put it to bed. And we're seeing this in India, right, where a government tries to do reforms, botches it in terms of how it communicates and pushes it through.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
fundamentally, if you read the farm acts, they're good, right?
yeah.
Someone like you who's in the business will understand and say that that is actually what is needed to solve the agricultural problem in India and in Pakistan. But it's very hard to do. And the moment you do it, you have protesters coming out that will probably lock down Lahore and Islamabad if that were to happen in Pakistan.
Yeah. That's why we're trying to keep our head down and not get the government involved in any way, and just come up with a bottoms-up private sector solution for this. But
Exactly. Go below the radar and scale up from there.
exactly. No, but you see, that's and the fantastic thing about Pakistan is that there's so much low-hanging fruit that it just requires people taking an initiative, and everyone in their daily lives, so you have these people who've come up with these clean drinking water type things, UET graduates, engineering students, and they've come up with this product that can clean sewage water into drinkable water. You just put it in, and the output is drinkable water. And obviously, they did this without even having any funding. They just applied themselves. They had this problem at their house. Obviously, they were not getting good water. They were getting stomach ailments and whatnot. And they decided to do something on their own, not wait for a water purification plant to be put in by the local government or the provincial government. And now obviously they've gotten some funding, and now they're trying to make it into a scalable thing where the issue is that you put in the water, but it takes a long time for it to get filtered. So they're coming up with technologies where they could do it quickly. So there's so much that can be done, and it's just about being that, letting go of the risk averse nature, having that societal pressures just calm down. Not everyone can be a doctor or an engineer. Okay, everyone should be an engineer. I encourage that. But and doctors, of course, after the pandemic. But going into the banks and multinational की नौकरी या सरकारी नौकरी तो बिल्कुल it should be वैसे we can't afford it as a government. I mean fiscally, and this thing about सरकारी नौकरी हमारे जो culture में, and then वो pension मिलेगी और पूरी जिंदगी पैसे होंगे. So again, I mean bankrupt even if we weren't. I mean that's not what I mean. Some people should go in public service, obviously, but it should not be about money or anything. It should be about public service for them. But my point is that absolutely we need this cultural shift, and hopefully in the last few years we've seen a lot of our homegrown startups emerging, and these so financing rounds are not success ki barometer at all. So I think one also needs to somehow nip this in the bud, because we see a lot of celebrations happening about these rounds and all of that. But that just means the work is getting started. This is not so for any entrepreneur, it should not be, the goal should not be, oh, I've raised money and then I retire or something. If you've raised money, then you've got to work like even more to
You have to invest it.
You have to invest it, and you have to make a return on it, and you have to give it your all, and because at the end of the day, everyone should be, and that's what any entrepreneur should look at. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? the why needs to be very important. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm in it to just make money. Obviously, I'm not saying you do something for charity, but try to find something that you can be passionate about. And I think more often than not, something that you would care deeply about would be if you've experienced a pain point, or you can identify a pain, something painful, and if you try to solve that, you will, you know, be more passionate about solving that, and also you'll hopefully also monetize that solution.
So speaking of culture, like one of the things that you often hear is like the Pakistani consumer is not super mature. So the things that you're trying to do, higher quality produce, commanding a premium, traceability, and sort of where's the food coming from, what's gone in it, it's not really there. What has your experience been like in terms of the consumer side of it, in terms of not only educating them, but their appetite or the level of desire that they have for something like a quality product coming to their home that they actually want to buy at pay a premium for? Is there really a demand for it, or are the naysayers right in terms of saying, look, the Pakistani consumers like doesn't really care about these things? I would argue it's not that, because I've seen it myself, even in a Karachi, where people are discerning. They know good quality produce from bad quality produce, even when they consume it at a lower price point. Was just curious to hear what that the consumer side of the equation has been like for you.
So it's a very interesting point, and I think so. I remember when, a few years back, we were one of the first ones to bring organic produce on our platform. And I remember a customer calling us and saying, "What have you sent me? I ordered organic, and these are even smaller in size than the normal ones." so,
They're supposed to be.
so they're like, "I'm not going to be ordering organic again. You keep this organic to yourself." But yeah, of course, over time, that discernment level has gone up quite a lot. I would not say it has gone on a mass level, but when it comes to quality, obviously everyone is concerned about quality, and a big challenge for us was, because in our culture, because people have a quality issue at the back of their head, they would go and buy their produce themselves, standing in the most filthy conditions, but they would go and pick out their own produce, touch and feel. And so a lot of people would say, how are you going to solve for this? Because people like to touch and feel. And that's true. There even, some people, for them, it's even therapeutic, because on the way back from the office, they'll just stop the car next to the ready wala and, say, okay, give me a dozen kidneys and this and that. Um, so these are real challenges that we've experienced, and we're trying to come to terms with. So there are different things for us, and the customer, frankly, also, so there is a segment of society which will pay a premium for this now, after this discernment, but that I still maintain is at the upper echelons of our society, from a income level point of view. But on the whole, if you still need to you still need to have your rates which are competitive, we believe that there is a solution that we can come up with which makes that happen. Because if we are disrupting, but for that, you then obviously need to get into the supply chain, right? Which we are doing, and that makes it more expensive and capital intensive slightly, initially. But the whole point was to disrupt the value chain and the RT and the 4 or 5 intermediaries. And if you were to get 2 or 3, or if all of them out, then obviously you can bring affordability to the equation. So we're working on that. But in terms of, are people on the whole willing to pay for premium or convenience? Not really. So even for delivery charges in America, you can see a model like Instacart work fantastically well. It's gone up against Amazon, and it's surviving. It's thriving. Post pandemic, it's grown so many. I don't know how many fold it's grown. But the underlying thing for them in their business model is they're able to charge users for that convenience that they're giving. In Pakistan, our consumers will tip our delivery riders, but they don't want us to charge a delivery fee. so,
Interesting.
so that, and that makes the delivery part challenging from a economics point of view, obviously. um, but again, as the pandemic happened, obviously the user adoption accelerated, and a lot of people got introduced to e-commerce. And I think mindsets also slightly have been altered on that front as well. Where I'm not saying people are going to pay like 200 rupees for a delivery, but they'll pay maybe 50 rupees or maybe up to 100 rupees, because they literally give that change to the rider anyway, right? I mean, because most of it is cash on delivery, so there is exchange of money happening, and they'll say, okay, you keep the change. So these things are there. In Pakistan, in e-commerce, I think the Pakistani customer starts his journey off by thinking that this website is a crook, and he's already in a state of trepidation that even like just by being on this website, this session having started, somehow my money is getting ripped off, and I'm being
I think the lack of trust is not just an online thing, right? It's a psychological fear consumers have of everyone out there to, to cheat them out of their money somehow.
and unfortunately, it just comes back to the whole thing, the ethos that we have had, where everyone's in it to make a quick buck and doubling their money. And we have unfortunately had, on quite a big scale, horror stories. And we have all these memes coming out, ordered this online, delivery this is the thing that got delivered.
The picture versus reality.
Picture versus reality. So these are big issues, and for us, actually, this is something that we are. So we've made our share of mistakes, but what we are trying to do is be very, very customer centric. I think this is again a long term play. This is not something that benefits us in the short term. In fact, it probably hurts us a little bit financially, but it's helping us a lot with our retention and our customer loyalty. And we, for instance, now on our produce, fresh produce, we have a money back guarantee. So this is how we deal with that touch feel thing. Yeah, okay, if you taking out a chance and going out on a limb, and for you as a user, this is very risky because you're changing your behavior. And normal behavior is that if you outsource buying of produce to your cook or someone else, the worst quality stuff comes, and yet you're still paying the same price that you were paying earlier. Now we're saying, give that to us. We'll send it to you. So you're saving your petrol. Your driver doesn't need to go around town, or you don't have to go around town in traffic. You spend that time with kids, go to the park, whatever, and we'll send you the produce. If you don't like the produce, we'll exchange it free of cost. If you don't want that, we'll give your money back. Simple. Um,
I- in a weird way, your competition then, or what you're trying to compete with and for, is people's time in a way, right? And you're saying, give me give me a little bit more in terms of a delivery fee or something else, and I will give you back time and actually better quality product. And if you solve for that and psychologically appeal to that need of them having more time for whatever else they want to do and not get stuck in traffic or whatever, then you've hit the goal point. Is that a fair way of saying it?
that's absolutely spot on. And not only are we asking them to, in fact, if one was to do a economic cost benefit analysis, they're saving money, because the 50 rupees that they're giving us for delivery, they're spending more on their petrol going from point A to B and B to A. In certain cases, I mean, obviously, if you're just going to the Karyana store down the road, I mean, maybe you're going on the cycle, but even in terms of rates, we'll be very competitive, and discounts and all of that. So yeah, absolutely, that is it's almost like a ease of mind and a lifestyle thing as well, that we are freeing up your time, we're freeing up your attention. When grocery shopping at the end of the day is mostly a chore, it's not something, I mean, there are people who find it entertaining, and families will go to the Carrefours and Metros, the big box stores, or but the novelty of that also wears off after a while. And then you've got COVID that has happened. So there's that element as well. So, but more than anything else, I mean, at the end of the day, it is about also having that quality that the product, underlying product has to be of a certain quality, and the policy, the customer's centricity needs to be such that if we mess up, which can happen, we rectify it ASAP, not 3 days or 4 days later, but like same day, same time, so that you can get your replacement and cook your meal, and that's that.
So have you thought about like doing things like within the app, like, when the order is packaged, the picture goes to the customer saying, look, here's your produce. And when it's delivered, another picture is taken to make sure that you're visually keeping track of the quality of the product that's going out to someone's doorstep? Or how do you account for the fact that, you want to make sure that from the distribution center all the way to the customer, like you spot the poor quality at the beginning, not at the end of the journey?
So yeah, we're precisely doing something very, very similar to that. We, um, we just WhatsApp a picture actually. So and this is something that was a total hack कह लें, एक total experiment था that really worked amazingly well. We were having issues, especially post-COVID lockdown, when our capacity got overwhelmed and we had a lot of orders coming in, and then we had to expand, and our team literally in like 20 days almost tripled, and we got a lot of new people in who weren't really trained in the speed of things, and with the lockdown as well, things were pretty crazy in April and March. So we were having a lot of issues with our quality control. Things were getting rushed through, and a lot of things were getting slipped through our protocols. They were slipping by. So what we did was, for our internal thing, we said, okay, in our internal communications, through the process, when the produce comes in, when that's packaged, send like us, the management of like the founders, send us a picture of that for each order on our chat group, and that created that deterrence, and also that pause in the system where, okay, everyone then had to take a breath when it came to that, and they would make sure that so our complaints just drastically fell.
Interesting. And I think, sorry to interrupt there, but I would say like WhatsApp answer, Mark Zuckerberg would be very happy to hear that, because that's the whole idea with WhatsApp Pay, right? Is like, if you're doing all this thing in WhatsApp to your customer, in any case, might as well pay them through the WhatsApp channel as well.
Yeah, no, WhatsApp is in Pakistan, WhatsApp is king. So in India as well, we don't have a WeChat. Um, so we have TeleTalk and a couple of other platforms, but WhatsApp and Facebook both are, I mean, tech adoption is stratospheric levels. So it's no match.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the beginning, and I want to conclude our discussion, which has been fascinating, with some advice for younger aspiring entrepreneurs. I know you mentioned that you didn't have an MBA. I didn't have one either. I did economics and undergrad and public policy and masters. And recently, I remember Elon Musk. He stokes this fire every once in a while. He did it again, where he said, "I would never hire an MBA because MBAs don't know anything." And then I was reading when Jeff Bezos stood down last week, someone posted an excerpt about how he in 98, 99, very early on in the Amazon years, went to a Harvard class. And he was sitting as a founder. No one really knew that he was the founder. And they discussed Amazon as a business. And the conclusion out of that, when he introduced himself at the end of the case discussion, these Harvard MBAs told him that, your business has no real sustainability behind it. You would be well advised to sell your business operations to a Barnes and Noble, and that is the best exit opportunity you will probably have. This here is Jeff Bezos now, right? So this MBA versus something else fire gets stoked every once in a while. So I was curious to hear your thoughts about, not being an MBA to being an entrepreneur, what that's been like, but also more importantly, as you look back at the years in entrepreneurship, what would you advise aspiring entrepreneurs who may come from various backgrounds, not necessarily a business one, in terms of the keys to success in this field?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think, and I maybe alluded a little bit earlier to this as well, that I think first and foremost, just make a list of things that one's not happy with in your own life. For instance, think about things that are painful for you, uh, and then imagine that if you could do something about it, and if you did have some resources about it, what would you do and what would it look like? And it does not need to be, it could be a thing that's like a huge thing, but it can also be a thing that is a certain level that can probably become a $10 million business, right? In Pakistan, it doesn't have to be $1 billion business. So, but there are so many things. Just so first, I'd say just start from that, so that finding your calling, finding your passion. No one knows what the. I mean, the only people who follow their true passion or calling are these world class athletes and world class artists, I would say, right? Artists, singers, and all of them. And the 99.9% of humanity can't do that. So I wish I could be like the next Imran Khan. I wish I could have been like the all rounder for Pakistan cricket team, but that's just I couldn't have been. So
I
uh,
was going to say Imran Khan as in the prime minister or the cricketer, but you answered that before.
yeah. So yeah, we obviously, when we were growing up, and 92, we were in as class, seventh class, sixth class, yeah. So yeah, I mean, so what I'm saying is that you have to really, how you find your calling and passion is also something that's a work in progress. 99.999% people are not born with this calling, and you discover it. And the way to discover it is, again, by having an open mind, not ruling out things, not so so first off, cultural mindset. Do things that our previous generations thought maybe these things are not very dignified, but don't think of it like that. Think of it as you're building something or solving something, and what are the things that you're solving for. So find that. Absolutely don't. I mean, lots of people still are trying to do just copy paste and do a fast one. Don't do that. Too many people are doing that. Find something that you like, and then try to make it a little bit unique, and then try to think big picture. And then nothing's for free. I mean, expecting that, okay, I've got an idea, and now in Pakistan, at least, I mean, maybe in Silicon Valley you can do this, or in China, even India, you have an idea and people will fund you. But maybe you can do that a little bit, but you have to have skin in the game. You need to have that stake, and that also comes from the passion, but you also need to put in that time and effort and that sweat. And if you can't put in the finances, put in all the rest and be honest. Don't try to wing it, or I'm going to just do this experiment for 6 months, and I've been accepted by the National Incubation Center, and they've given me 10 lakh rupees, and I'm going to spend it on my Howdy burgers or something. So do it like that, and then if you do find something, then persevere. Try to come up with a solution, make it work somehow or the other, till you can't. But try to at least give it so much that you won't have regrets, and think, oh, what if I had just not quit at that stage. Because I mean, we're talking about Elon Musk. Just look at him. He was down to his last month's cash reserve in 08, 09, I believe, with Tesla and the SpaceX. And SpaceX was it was his last launch, and that was it. He was bankrupt after that. And his third and last launch that he had money for, the launch went successfully. and he was able to raise more money, and the rest is
Yeah,
history.
Tesla was about to be bought out by the government because it initially was
Yeah,
funded by the government and was short on cash and was about to go
exactly,
bankrupt.
exactly. So I mean, again, luck is there, all these things are there, but you also have to make your luck. So make your luck, be brave, take risks, but calculated risks by if you've identified pain points, then already you're starting to calculate, the risk calculation is happening, because if this is a pain point for you, chances are it's a pain point for some people, many other people as well. And then that means you can start to, if you can solve it, then there is a monetization play happening. So think about it in these terms, and then learn. Keep an open mind. Don't think, if you're a MBA or Ivy League or whatever, don't think you're the bomb now and you know everything. Be humble. I think biggest lesson for all entrepreneurs should be to be humble, and once they become an Elon Musk, then they can tweet wisdom out how many times they want to.
Or make GameStop rally as they please, or Dogecoin or whatever it is that's next on their plate. But I think
Correct.
your point about not wanting to do something huge is all the time is very very important. Made me think about this case study I was reading about. I think it's a Japanese company that only makes zippers for jeans. That's their whole
Mm,
business.
mm,
And
mm,
the pain, it was exactly what you're describing. Like the business came about because the entrepreneur realized that zips for jeans were a problem because they would get stuck all the time, and they would reduce the overall quality feel of the jeans itself. Like you're paying $100 something for a jeans, and next thing you know, you're zipping it up and down and it gets stuck and it's a pain point. And so they solved for it. And I was watching this case study, and they were like, yeah, it's every major jeans brand now uses their zips. It's a near monopoly, right? And I went
yeah.
back to my jeans and I opened it up and I was like, oh yeah, there you go, this is the jeans. And it's a multi-million-dollar business with low cost, high price, the reputable brand which has connections with all the leading fashion retailers of the world, and it's doing phenomenally well just because it solved the problem of a zip, right? It doesn't have to be something super crazy like that.
Absolutely. Look at our homegrown success story, Mark Hoare slash Atoms. I mean,
Yeah.
the it was. I mean, it's amazing that no one thought of this. The way they do the sizes. No, Nike, Adidas, none of them had thought about this. None of
I
the
think Adidas
big.
copied their box design recently, which I saw on social media. Which it's
That's
something people get pissed off. I would get pissed if someone copied something of mine, but it is also flattering, right?
it's
That
flattering. It's
Adidas
flattering.
decided to copy.
It's very flattering. It's very and amazing. What a story! And that really shows. I mean, I think that should show all of us that there's a lot of talent in our country, and if you just if you have the drive and that mindset, don't. I mean, we've just become too used to like looking towards government and what is the government going to do. If we're going to stay on that track, then things will take a very long time. So just try to do initiatives as you know. It doesn't matter even if you're like a fresh grad or if you're someone who's been working for 20, 30 years, 25 years in a bank, for instance. If you've got so much experience, I mean, some of the best founders are those. I mean, average age of successful founders is I think in the 40s, and there's a reason for that as well because insights, experiences, learnings. It takes time. You can be much bolder and brasher in your 20s, but you also need some of the lessons. So this is a thing for everyone. If you're like anyone in Nestle or a bank or wherever, if you've got ideas, try it. Why not?
Speaking of keeping an open mind, last question to you. Like, I ask my guests about this frequently now. Is what are two or three books that you've recently read or read at any point in time that you think about as being deeply influential that people should pick up and read as well?
So I think I'll start off with, especially for my business, because it's a consumer-facing business. I think for me, the gold standard in e-commerce has been Zappos. and their founder just passed away very recently. But he wrote this book, Delivering Happiness. That was the title, and it was, it's just amazing, because you brought up Amazon and how, the Harvard MBA said you should just sell it to Barnes and Noble and be done with it. I mean, what are you doing selling books? Imagine this guy was selling shoes. And shoes, how do you sell I mean, I'm thinking now, we're talking 2000, year 2000. How do you sell shoes online? You had to go to Foot Locker or whatever place. You have to put on the sneaker. You have to put your shoe in that thing which has the scale on it, and someone comes and puts the shoe, on you, and you're trying out
Are you
different
flat-footed? Are you what heel
yeah,
level, etc., right? All sorts of things.
all sorts of things. And this guy goes and puts up. He wasn't the one who started it, but he was the main investor, and then he took it over. And he had this philosophy about making the customer this. We hear about this line, right? Customer is always right. Customer is king. But he was not. He just said, make the customer feel so special that they are going to just keep on buying from you. And so the whole book had a very huge impact on how I started looking at customer service and our customer centricity, and looking at small things that may not be very scalable, may not be even profitable in the short term, but would create this sense of customer loyalty that would be transcendent. And that can only be a great intangible for any business to have, any consumer facing business to have. So I think that was for any. I think it's just people in business should just read it, because it's just a great life story and example of how this guy looked at consumers and customers. Um, then I'd say, well, I mean, by the way, I do love to read. I haven't been able to read that much, but generally, history, current affairs, all of these things are, because I did my political science, so geopolitics is also something that I do enjoy. But those books usually are, they take a little bit longer to read, and I still haven't been able to transition myself to Audible and these other things. But the books I'll probably mention today are more to do with business or maybe even life. So Grit is another good book, I think, that resonated a lot with me, because it motivated me. So it's a Harvard psychology professor, Angela Duckworth, I believe her name is. So her book Grit, and basically, again, the perseverance, not giving up or staying the course, big picture. So that kind of resonated with me, because there have been times in this journey where I felt, maybe should I like call it a day and walk away, or is this an ego thing for me, or what am I doing? Why am I still like doing this? And when is the light, or when is the tunnel going to end, and the light going to show, and all of that. So this book is something I think all aspiring entrepreneurs should read, because entrepreneurship is not easy. It is not sexy. It's not. It's hard. It requires grit. It requires grit and that perseverance. And then I really enjoy Nassim Nicholas Taleb's books. Actually, I'd say obviously Black Swan, but the last two that I read, Skin in the Game and the Antifragility, I think those are again very. He's got a very interesting style. He's really, he can ruffle a lot of feathers as well with his writings and his
Does that
opinions.
on a daily basis on social media.
Yeah, yeah. So but the again the so that's why I also brought this up, the skin in the game thing. And you look at it from our, how our macro civil service reforms and all of that goes on, and our governance issues, and a lot of it is stemming from people just not having skin in the game, and no accountability, and as Dr. Nadeem would say, perks and privileges. So, but I digress. But in business, I think again the point is that you need to have your skin in the game, and you need to give it your best shot, and also you it ties in with that great thing, that anti-fragile. You you've got to be you've got to have a thick skin, and these so some of these books actually, they resonated, and especially certain periods of time certain things resonate more. There have been some fantastic books that one reads, and but maybe you're in a state of mind at that, or maybe you're on a beach holiday and you're reading, so they're not going to like really influence you like that, because you're just very calm and relaxed. But these are, I would say, some of the books that resonated a lot with me, and I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think there are three fantastic recommendations. I have read Naseem's work. I haven't read the other two, but based on your description, there's a theme here that I would want to point out before we close. It made me think about the Whole Foods experience, and again, Whole Foods, Austin-based company, they got flooded. Their first and flagship store got flooded, and there's a famous case study around what happened after. But based on what you've been talking about, they had invested in all these three things, right? They had customer centricity and customer happiness at the core of their value proposition. They had made decisions to invest in things that may not have been profitable but enhanced the value proposition and psychological feel of the product for the customer. And they were anti-fragile, so when the store gets swept away by a flood, the community got together and bailed out the business, right? And that bailing out can only happen because the entrepreneur had skin in the game, not only in the business level but at the community level, and had
Right.
invested so much in terms of satisfying their customers that when he went under and his business was flooded, the community said, we'll step in. And that's something, again, a financial model or a set of assumptions may not be able to deliver, but it's the touch and feel of your business, that you've done things a certain way, that you have a loyal following that says, wait a minute, I'm going to stand by you in your hour of need. And lo and behold, fast forward a few years from then, Amazon buys Whole Foods, and
Yeah.
everyone who's an early shareholder in that business, many of whom were part of that Austin-based community, are multimillionaires, right? And that is how you should think about things.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's pretty much sums it up. Absolutely, social
Jarrar,
ownership. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And this has been a fascinating conversation. I know we've run over a bit, but couldn't help myself. I wish you all the best. I think we're definitely going to have you on again as 24/7 scales up and enters new cities, fully takes over Lahore. But this is a fascinating project that you are on, and I think it is needed. We need that type of innovation in Pakistan's food supply chain and agriculture and consumer retail side. So wishing you all the best. Keep it up, and transform this sector.
Thank you so much. I really had a ball of a time, and apologies for going over, but I just it really was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
None needed. Thank you. Take care.
Okay.